A third recording of the night. What if Belle had unlimited lightning breathing? Not gonna lie, I did not expect this to get as much clout as it did. Y'all got 64 likes. That's probably the highest I've had. No, didn't have the highest view count, but who gives a fuck? What if Belle had unlimited? Let's do this. So we left off with Hestia dipping in the night with her cloak. Next morning, Belle wakes up. And he heads to the dungeon. But on his way, he is approached by a small supporter. The supporter introduces herself as Lily Ruka Ard, and she requests a job for her to be his supporter, seeing that he carries a backpack and he's walking alone. Belle says, "Oh, I'd appreciate it. What do you want your cut to be?" She says, "We can negotiate that later." And they go into the dungeon. Belle, with his new ability, makes it down to floor 17, right before the boss room. And they've collected a hefty sum. And yes, so they come back out of the dungeon, killing monsters on the way up. I believe 34 million Valis was what they got in the original. So they got 1 million Valis. Belle splits it 50-50 with Lily before she can say anything, and he says, "Thanks, Lily. You were a big help today." And he walks away. Before Lily could say anything or protest, he's gone. Fuck. God, I'm turning off my notifications next time. That was my girlfriend. Piss off, guys. Don't even talk to me. Liv, I'm telling you about this, so I'm gonna tell you to watch this video. Yeah. Watch the 2 minutes. It'll be funny. I'm telling you. Sorry about that, guys. No, nothing. So Lily doesn't get to protest, and she walks home. Now, this repeats for about 3 days. But on the third day, Lily's walking home with her cut, and she's approached by 3 beastmen. They beat her up and take all her belongings that she had on her, including her money, and she's left there with even more extended hate adventures. The next day, Lily and Belle are in the dungeon when the dungeon breaks around them. Now, they're not sure exactly what's happening, but the floor breaks and they fall down through one of those pits that lead to lower floors. They fell down on floor 17, which is not bad for Belle at all, because Belle can handle it. Now, Lily knows that if he could... No. Lily knows what floor they're on based on the monsters. And Belle doesn't really care. But Belle asks Lily if she's willing to move on to floor 18 with him. Lily says, "Sure, why not?" So Belle walks into the boss room and Goliath spawns. As Goliath walks out, Belle unsheaths his sword, and for the first time, Lily sees the blade, expertly crafted with a lightning bolt streaming through. Lily thinks, that sword. And in a flash, he's gone. Belle is running up the Goliath's arm, and then he disappears into a lightning stream again, across Goliath's throat and down his arm again. And Goliath's throat is cut. And since only the the floor guardian Goliath that spawns when they damage the dungeon, which can regenerate, this Goliath cannot. So it dies from the slit throat. And I don't know if boss monsters drop any kind of item, or just this large magic stone. But I'm gonna say they drop an item. This drops This drops a magic longsword. It's called the Illuminator. It is a light type weapon. Belle picks it up and puts it on his back. And they leave. Belle says, so Lily, do you want to come back here tomorrow and get a new item? I heard that they drop randomly. Lily says, yeah, it might be a good way to farm for a lot of gold. And on their way up, they fight and fight and fight. And then they get another million bells. At this point, it's happened 4 days in a row. But at this time, Lily takes a new route home, and she gets there without getting mugged. Belle, on the other hand, has a checkup day with Anna. Belle walks in with his longsword in his back and his katana at his waist. As he walks into Anna, he says, hey, Miss Anna, how you been? Anna says, well, I've been doing fine, Belle. How are you? Then Anna looks at his equipment and sees that he's wearing his normal brown whatever cloth, and he has 2 swords, one on his back and one on his waist. Anna says, Belle, where'd you get those swords? He says, well, this one dropped from a monster, and this one I believe is a dungeon artifact. A dungeon artifact? Where'd you hear that? He says, I didn't. I found it in a dungeon. That's what I named it. A dungeon artifact. So you know what they say? He who finds it is he who names it. Unless there's a record of items being found in the dungeon before. And it says, no, this is the first case in my experience. He says, okay then. And he shows her the Illuminator. And she says, this is a high rate magic sword. I believe it sends a light beam when swung. It seems like it has a fairly high durability for a magic sword. It'll sell for a lot. But the other one you have, I don't know what it is. It is made of an unknown metal and is highly reactive. I can barely touch you without being electrocuted. What's up, guys? Fuck. Sorry, some random stuff started playing in the background. Yeah, disregard that or I will end you all. JK. JK, don't demonetize me. Lol. Lol. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Anyway, Anna says that she has the appraisal skill, but she doesn't know what it's made of. what it is, even. He says, well, I think it's a magic sword. Although I haven't seen any damage to it. Not even a smidge on its smidge. Also, it has an electric attribute. See, watch this. He holds the sword in its sheath, and he zips around like a lightning bolt. And then he says, it's very easy to use, too. It's almost instinctual. She says, well, be careful with it, Belle. You don't know how dangerous it could be. Belle says, don't worry, Miss Anna. And he runs out. He puts the illuminator on his wall. Well, no, he puts it in a case he bought in the church. He puts it in a sword case. Along with his katana. I mean, I was about to say lightning blade, but I was about to be like, Chidori? No. Alrighty then. Yeah, but he leaves his swords in his sword case, and he lays on the couch. He's thinking, and he realizes that Hestia hasn't been back in like nearly a week. So he goes out in the town and starts looking for her. As he's doing this, he comes across Lily in an alleyway, being mugged again. He runs up to help her, but realizes he's not carrying his sword. He runs up to the guy beating her, and he says, hey, cut it out. Leave her alone. The man says, what are you gonna do about it, squirt? I'm gonna. And then, in an instant, not an instant, well, in a flash, Belle lightning speeds over to him and decks him. In the throat, and then in the face. In that moment, Belle thought that he needed to move as fast as possible without his sword. And I said he had thunder breathing, not thunderblade. Lightning breathing, thunder breathing. I don't even know what I'm writing anymore. Anyway, yeah. So, Belle beats the snot out of that guy in 2 hits, and he helps Lily up. He says, hey Lily, how about we go to dinner? My treat. Lily says, sure. And they walk into dinner at Mamma Mia's place. Seer and I don't remember the elf's name. I'm sorry. This is a reoccurring problem, I know. Remember every other fucking one. Doesn't matter. I'm sorry if I'm stopping randomly. I'm just realizing I have to make another what if after this. My neck hurts. At least the next one will be a little bit easier to make. So, yes. Belle sits down and eats with Lily. And they have a conversation. So, Lily, who were the guys in the alleyway? Or guy in the alleyway? Lily says, nobody. Don't worry about it. He says, but I am worried. You were mugged, and you didn't tell me. You could have called out for help. You were just sitting there taking it. She says, nobody would have come. I've been mugged many times before, and nothing ever changes. They just take all my stuff and leave. Sometimes they give me a few bruises while they're at it. He says, sorry. In that case, you should carry a knife. A knife? Yeah, here. Pulls out a small bag and gives it to her. Here, just keep this on your person at all times, and if someone comes after you, hold this out. And if they try to fight you, fight back. Self-defense. Lily smiles and says, "Thanks, Belle." That ends, and on his way back to the thing, he meets up with Hestia. Now, Hestia says, "Hey, Belle, so I found a blacksmith to appraise your weapon." She says, "Really? Okay, we have to go back to the church to get it, though." They go back to church, get the katana, and then they go to Hephaestus. And Wealth grows on a magic sword expert. So Wealth appraises the magic sword and finds that it's known as Thunderfang. Apparently, it's a mythological weapon handcrafted by Zeus and the King of the Thunder Dragons, or the King, the King of the Thunder Dragons, Fang. It bonds to a soul user, and when that happens, he adapts the abilities of the blade into himself. They all look at Belle and they say, "What did you find?" He says, "My bad?" Hephaestus puts out face palms and says, "Oh, kids these days stumbling upon mythological weapons." Hephaestus says, "Wealth, here's a job for you. Join this guy's party and just observe the abilities of the weapon. Keep reports on it and do maintenance on its gear." Wealth says, "You got it." He shakes Wealth's hand. And then he goes, finds Lily, and tells him that they have a new party member. And that's where I'm ending it here, because I have another what if to make. And this, I'm not gonna lie, Denma Even what ifs are a lot harder to make than you people think. Because there's no real set plot. Anyway, thanks for being here. Little Wielding Demon. You guys are the Legion. We are ASMA. Like if you enjoyed. Comment for your criticism. And if you think it's worth it, subscribe. Goodbye.